Welcome to another episode of Embracing the Gray with Vic and Kels, where we challenge the all or nothing thinking when it comes to all things food, body, and mindset. So excited to have you all here. Today, we are going to be deep diving into a new topic for me. It's something that I've kind of taught and teach in our Rediscover You Free program. However, I didn't know there was an actual name to it. And it's this idea of cognitive diffusion and ACT. And Vic, you're the one who came up with this topic today and definitely have a lot of a wealth of knowledge. So I'm just going to let you take it away.
So, as a way for you guys to get to our YouTube channel, we are going to be talking about acceptance and commitment therapy. If you're not actually in the therapy, you can just refer to it as acceptance and commitment training. But this is the beautiful psychological, the hexaflex that this therapy framework goes around. It's actually really cool and it's really pretty too. So, it just kind of makes you want to look. But more specifically, and maybe we can kind of break these down week by week because it is a lot all at once. We are going to be focusing on the bottom left. So the cognitive diffusion section. So it says the process of learning to notice the process of a thought rather than getting caught up in the content. Through observing the process of thinking, thoughts that may have previously led to significant distress or unworkable behavior weaken. So I first learned about this. I'm actually surprised that I still remember because it was in the last treatment that I was in Idaho, and I was working 12s and then going to treatment. And I really didn't absorb as much as I wanted to, but this was something for somebody that struggles with the black and white all or nothing thinking. I never knew about ACT. And so once my therapist started talking about it, I couldn't stop thinking about it because I was like, this is what it is. I'm not psychologically flexible in so many parts of my life. And after kind of doing some digging about, ACT, that's what we'll call it, or ACT, psychological flexibility is really the measure of how mentally well you are. Inflexibility is the rigid rules. The first thing I thought of, Kels, was when I think we were making pizzas and I totally burnt my arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could have, grabbed the pan and threw it across the kitchen and said screw this, we're not eating. The whole day's messed up. It's those reactions that you're just kind of wait, what? Why would you even think to do that? It was clearly an accident. You didn't do it on purpose. So ACT is kind of that type of framework. I actually have a little thing for what it stands for. So A is accept your thoughts, feelings, self, and history or experiences. C is choosing valued actions. That means knowing what your values are and then making that conscious choice every single day to align with those values. And then T is to take action. The experience is going to be so much better when you're actually taking the action, being persistent, talking about what you want to act on, LOL, and no pun intended. They're going to be small, easy, measurable things. And so, yeah, that's kind of the framework. Obviously, this hexaflex has a lot present moment values, the committed action, self as context, cognitive diffusion, and then experiential acceptance. So we're focusing on cognitive diffusion, and we do talk about it quite a bit in previous episodes of we talk about the untethered soul and being the observer and at the seat of consciousness, not attaching to everything. And this is just, I guess, another way to put a name to these things that we're talking about. And for diffusion, so when you think of you and a thought, right? If you have a thought, I'm just going to use the one that I was kind of thinking about, I am fat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you start, you keep telling yourself that, you have a binge eating episode, you start restricting, oh my gosh, you get on the scale, you're 5 pounds more, water retention, right? It's this huge spiral effect. You're going to start believing that is your truth, that is, you're believing that. That's you fusing to one thought that created this huge spiral. So cognitive diffusion is defusing the thought and you. And you could say, instead of I am fat, you can say I'm having a thought that I'm fat.
Hmm.
Even more so, creating distance is I'm noticing
Yeah.
I'm having a thought that I'm fat.
Hmm.
And that's like the ultimate separation of, hey, brain, like I see you, I see what you're doing, I see this negative thought, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we'll talk about today. And I think one of the things that it kind of talks about is defusion is the deliteralization of a thought. So instead of taking everything one statement as the number one truth and there's nothing else, it's that all or nothing mentality, right? It's saying that there can be this gray area, that there
Hmm.
can be more than just this thought, that there can be this thought and another thought. And so it's deliterizing the thought, so like kind of taking the weight out of it and decreasing the tendency to make a thought your truth.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our basis of what we're going to be that's like what we're going to talk about. And there's obviously 5 million examples that we can think of, and then I have some like things that we could talk about as ways as practicing diffusion.
Yeah. No, I think that'd be huge. I think the biggest thing, like when I was looking into this last night, it was like it's the idea that you are able to look at the thought rather than buy the thought. Like
Mhm.
be like buying into it, like that this is truth. And it just like, it's something where we talk about all the time, like our thoughts impact our beliefs and our beliefs drive our behavior, right? Like if I believe that I will always struggle with food, which at one point I did,
Yep.
I 100% believed that I was always going to struggle with binge eating, overeating, or not being able to control myself around certain foods like chocolate or candy or what have you, cookies. I believed that it was always going to be a problem. And because I believed it, that created feelings, which then created certain behaviors and actions, right? So like and that's, I know that's CBT, that's cognitive behavioral therapy, but this is kind of the same
Yep.
thing, and it just gives us a chance to again separate ourselves from our thoughts, that we are not our thoughts. And it's crazy because like it's like once you see it, it's so interesting because like again, I come from this place where a lot of my relationship and like struggles with food are just, they're so past, they're so, they're not really issues anymore. Which, man, if like my 2 or 3 year old, like not 3 year old but like 3 years ago
Yeah.
self could see me now, she'd be like, what? Like, I used to think people were lying if they said that they used to struggle with binge eating and they no longer do. I'm like, you are a liar. Don't even like play that game with me. I play pretend too, but like this is for real.
Yeah.
But now I have other things in my life right now. And like the thing that when you said I am fat, like obviously that doesn't resonate with me right now. But the thought that kept coming up all weekend or all this week for me is like, I am scared.
Mm.
I am scared. Like I'm experiencing something that I'm not used to, or I have all these fears or all this history or all these past things that are coming up for me, and I'm scared. And then for you to just say, let's pause. So first let's say, hey, I am having a thought that I am scared. And
Mhm.
then like you said, taking it one step further, I am noticing I am having a thought that I am scared. It doesn't mean that I actually am scared. Another way I used to say this is like, I feel scared, but I really do like this idea that like, it doesn't even have to be a feeling, that this is literally just a thought. And this thought does not have to be true.
Yeah, and I think taking it to the very first part of what this framework is acceptance.
Mm,
And this, so like you kind of made mention of like, yeah, we've talked about CBT, like CBT, DBT, and ACT are all interconnected. And I learned more about CBT in school. I did DBT in one treatment center, and I did ACT, a bigger focus. That was like my therapist, like that was her love, and I didn't understand it until her and I like really really got into it. But they talk so much, and mostly with the keyword acceptance. And I had this thing on my wall. I don't know where it's probably not as relevant. I mean, not that it's not relevant, but I used to have to read it all the time that pain plus suffering is non-acceptance. Acceptance is just suffering.
Mm.
This so like I can if I accept something, so if I'm going through something and or I'm sorry, it's just pain.
I
What
was
did I
like, wait, I'm like, hold on. I was
so
like,
if I have a painful
yeah,
experience
okay,
and
yeah.
I'm acceptance of it, it's just a painful experience.
Yes.
If I am non-accepting, if I'm willful, if I don't want to like actually accept reality, I have pain and suffering. And that's just going to bring about so many more thoughts, so many more negative emotions,
Hmm.
thus creating this like pattern. When you choose, I feel like once you can kind of like accept things, accept reality,
Hmm.
um, your choices, your options, your the outcomes are going to be endless. Whereas if you're just non acceptant, if you're going to be willful and choose to just not do anything, there's not much else to do because that's the choice that you made.
This is so true. I've always heard it this way that it's like pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice.
Mhm.
And I know like that may be hard for certain people to hear or whatever else, but it really is, in my mind, quite true. There is always going to be pain, guys. Like it, again, to be in a world where there isn't any pain, where we're happy all the time and everything's working out, is that's like a flat line. That's like dead man's goals. A heartbeat has highs and lows. And so I think for me on that end too is just like recognizing like you said, am I suffer, like do I choose to suffer? I guess in the idea I wanted to talk about, it was acceptance, right? How
Yeah.
many of us struggle with the idea of acceptance, that if I accept this, then I'm giving up, then it's apathy. They confuse acceptance with apathy, saying like, if I accept that this is true, then I'm just going to give up. If I accept that I don't, that I'm overweight right now, then I'm just going to give up. I'm not going to, I won't even keep trying. And it's not true. Like when you accept that this is your body right now, then you can start taking smaller steps to take you to where you want to go, as opposed to being in this place where like, no, I want that body now, I want to be where I want to, like, right now. And you start taking um these drastic actions that keep bringing you back, and you yo-yo. And so instead of just coming from a place, this is where I'm at right now, and that's okay. It doesn't, just because you accept something doesn't mean you aren't still taking actions to change it.
Yeah. And I think so one of the kind of exercises that you can do, and obviously like I didn't specifically do this exercise when I was, in November, December of last year, but I I s- and I know that like we talk about it often, that time frame for me, but I remember like getting on the scale in November. Actually, I mean, in October, I went to the doctor and had seen my weight for the first time. I hadn't weighed myself for a long time. And I remember just being there like, frick, all of the F words you could think of. Like, what the heck? Like, I felt like I was so far gone that there was
Mm.
no more going the other way. Like this was just going to be it. This was just it. Like I, dug myself into this hole. And that I could have just chose to like not accept the reality, but the reality was that you know, so I'm looking at my thing. So like act, so accept, like there were experiences, there was my history, there was my current reality. Like this is just what it is. And really the defining moment of like who I was going to be was whether I was going to choose to accept it or not accept it. And kind of that was kind of like my road. Um, so you can take this unacceptable reality and turn it into something that's a little bit more psychologically flexible. So I'm going to use the example of my reality at that time. It was that I was over 350 pounds. And that was something I've never said out loud, like on a podcast. I've
Have
never
not.
like really have just said it to you and my doctor. And That's about it. Um, but like that was so scary to me. Like I couldn't even like conceptualize that in my brain. Like what just happened? Like why didn't you intervene sooner? You know, all those things. Um, so that was my unaccepting reality. How I can choose to kind of defuse from it and accept the situation is I am 300 over 350 pounds, and I know that this is not going to be my destiny. Like this isn't set in stone. I know the things that I need to do. I know them, and now I have to take committed action. And so it's moving through that process of like one of them was like I can't lose weight. Okay, that's kind of if you're just going to say that and not do anything about it. But if you're going to use kind of acceptance commitment therapy framework, it's going to be I've struggled with my weight. And then an action. I'm going to go to the doctor, get my vitals done, get my labs checked, get my hormones checked, and I'm going to start walking every day. Or I'm going to, do 5 push-ups on my knees every day, whatever it is. And once you start like actually accepting, okay, like it's such a courageous act. I get it. Like I've been there, I've done it, we've done it. But once you start, it kind of builds that momentum for you. So I was not planning on tearing up today. That was not my thought.
Yeah, your
Um,
makeup's so beautiful.
I've just been doing the red eyeshadow lately. So I have a little list of cognitive fusion versus defusion, and so that we can kind of listen to the contrast of how they can be different. So cognitive fusion, thoughts are reality. It is as if we are thinking what we are thinking is actually present in the here and now. So this is you fusing with your thoughts. Thoughts are truth. We believe them. Thoughts are important. We take them seriously and we give them our full attention. Thoughts are orders. We automatically obey them. Thoughts are wise. We assume that they know best and we follow their advice. Okay. So I think orders eating disorder. Like I think
Oh, yeah.
of you have to do this. You can't eat that. And we just like, okay, like I'm just gonna, not buy that today. Like think about how many times that ruled your life, or we thought that our thoughts were like the wisest thing ever, right?
11:59. Start over.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All those weird, oh my gosh. Yes, fixations. Okay. Cognitive defusion. Thoughts are merely sounds, words, stories, bits of language passing through our heads.
I love that. Gosh, it gives it so much less power.
I know. Thoughts may or may not be true. We do not automatically have to believe them. Thoughts may or may not be important. We pay attention only if it is helpful. Thoughts are not orders. We do not have to obey them. Thoughts may or may not be wise. We don't automatically follow their advice. So, when you have an unhelpful thought, here's some questions you can ask yourself. And I'll link this for
I
you
was
guys.
about like, this is huge. Like, I mean, like, it's good to be aware, but like, let's make sure
Yeah.
like we have some actual
This
strategies.
it's from Russ Harris, actmindfully.com. It's this huge PDF document. Like you could take so many notes on it. It's ridiculous. But helpful questions for unhelpful thoughts. Is this thought in any way useful or helpful to me? Is
Mhm.
this an old story? Have I heard it before? What would I get for buying into this story? Could this be helpful or is my mind babbling? Or as Michael Singer would say, is it just the melodrama in your head?
Yeah.
Does this thought help me take effective action? I love that one. And am I going to trust my mind or my experience?
Mm.
I just love those.
Man, it's so hard to like, because your mind, like, and I think this is another big thing to remember, guys, is that like your brain again, was not designed to help you thrive. It was designed to help you survive. And so there's a reason we have a negativity bias. There's a reason that we tend to focus on the negative or focus on the possible threat, right? And it's because like our brain just wants us to stay safe. Like it doesn't care if we're happy. It just cares if we're safe, which like may mean then that like it'll give us thoughts that will hold us back.
Mhm.
And that was something like I think you had said too is like it's causing us to avoid pain, possible pain. It's forcing us to not get outside of our comfort zone, but we know that growth and progress and joy even comes from getting outside of our comfort zone, from getting outside of the familiar. Um, and so just kind of recognizing that your brain is doing its job, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's has your best interest at heart.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, the whole point, and I don't remember where I read it. I was reading so much, about all this, but one of the one of the conditions that we learned about in nursing school was congenital insensitivity of pain. And it's literally somebody that is born and they do not feel any pain,
Mm.
and they die so soon
Mhm.
because there's no sensory inputs, they can't respond to anything. um and so, like, even just having that, like, physiological understanding of it, you can really see how it applies to, like, actual experiences that we each have in our lives. um but the goal, obviously, of this type of training or therapy is to have that abundant, rich,
Mhm.
full life, while also understanding that there is the reality of suffering and you will encounter it. Like, there's not going to be um a day where there's not going to be something that comes up, somewhere down the line for you. And so life becomes, I guess, so much richer. I saw a therapist that said, like, this is a way to get out of your head and into your life, and to
Ooh,
really, like, to
yeah.
really look at it from that perspective. I read that this morning and I was just like, whoa, get out of my head and live into my life, like, actually be in my life.
And it's true, like, how often, like and I know this has been true for me lately, I'm just like, I'm living this whole other reality, like, in my head, and I can feel it, like, I'm playing out all these scenarios and all these whatever else, and for me, maybe right now it's in a context of a possible relationship, or it's in the context of, like, my work or my whatever else, and just, like but I'm missing the now. I'm missing right now because I'm like, well, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? Well, what if this happens? Right. And like I'm playing out these like kind of worst case scenarios again, like that's kind of what our brain tends to do unless we take a more conscious effort. Um,
Yeah. And I'm somebody that, and I know that I may have mentioned it before, like the exercise of, like, leaves on a stream, different ways that you can kind of visualize this concept so that you can kind of implement it into your life. So what the way that I kind of think about it is, and I have this little metaphor list for act, is imagine your thoughts and emotions coming and going like leaves on a stream, not changing the course of the stream itself.
mm,
So it's really you not being able to change, like, oh, I want a river, or I want, like, this bigger stream. Like, no, no, no. These are just thoughts. That this stream is your reality, and just letting these things kind of wisp by. You can appreciate some of the leaves, you cannot appreciate the other ones, like, just kind of letting it go. Another one is the quicksand metaphor. If you get trapped in quicksand and try to swim out, you'll get sucked in.
mm. Is
If you accept that that's where you are and let yourself relax, then you'll float to the surface.
that true?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Good to
I'm
know.
yeah. Deck of cards analogy. If you're playing a game of poker, are you better off playing the hand that you were dealt, or the hand that you wish you were dealt?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Mm,
And then chessboard. Imagine that you're a chessboard and the chess pieces are thoughts and feelings that move across the board without changing the actual board itself.
Yeah.
So these are just ways to kind of like make this easier. I know that it's obviously like a very hard concept to grasp, and it really does take it kind of just like whatever resonates with you, take it for what it is and practice it. So like for me, it was really just the leaves on a stream thing. Nobody had ever told me that until I was what, 19 years old, 20 years old, and I was like, "Oh, like my thoughts aren't truth, my thoughts aren't facts. Like what? What are you talking about?" Like I used to think that those were like that was it. The things that were going on in my head were it. That was all. Um they were just as equal as the reality that I was experiencing basically. Um and then like other ways that you can kind of diffuse your thoughts are like writing your thoughts out backwards and then saying it and being like, okay, that doesn't make sense, or like writing it out a few times and being like, is that rational, is that logical, is that helpful? um some people like to say they like to sing their thoughts, like that was another example, like
Oh,
sing your
yeah.
thought, and how like if it's a negative thought, are you really going to sing it like
Someone
that?
had also said, like, do it in accents,
Yeah,
like, "I
it there's
can't
funny
go
stuff.
to the party if I'm anxious." Like, it
Yeah.
was just, like,
Think
being
of
really
think
weird.
of it as like pop-ups on a website, like you go onto a website and it's like pop-up, okay, you just exit out of it and move on with your life,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, I know. I just love all the like little funny examples. So that's obviously just one part of ACT and the psychological hexaflex. There's other parts of it, but it all plays into this notion of psychological flexibility and being okay that these thoughts are happening, that these experiences are happening. Um, and then like my favorite part is like defining your values and then the committed action. Which we can get into next week. But yeah, I hope that kind of helped. I
Yeah,
feel like we talk about this stuff a lot, but sometimes it's like,
repetition is the key to
yeah,
mastery. And
yes.
this stuff is yeah, it's difficult, sometimes to fully, grasp sometimes, and so we're hoping that especially if you're watching the YouTube version of this, maybe being able to see some of the, graphics, and if not, like I said, we'll have the links down below, so you can always see the Hexaflex yourself, and you can see what we're talking about, but I'm definitely a visual person, so, we wanna make sure that that's available for you as well. And yeah, let us know, guys, if there's anything specific you would like us to talk about or break down. If there's anything specific you are dealing with. And I'd like to reiterate that, yes, we're talking about a big concept right now as far as like our thoughts, but I want you to kind of like, how can I put this towards my body image?
Mhm.
Right. Like, I know I get a lot of people who are struggling. And by the way, like, we all are going to have like bad body image days. Like, it's part of living in a culture where we're constantly inundated with messaging that this is what our body is supposed to look like. But just recognizing that those thoughts are not facts, and recognizing that you really do have the power to change those thoughts, or to, I am noticing that I'm having a thought that my body is not worthy, wait, based on the way it's looking. Or I've had somebody like, I notice that I'm having the thought that my body doesn't fit in this clothing right, just the way I think it should. And basically like coming down to like, yeah, that's the thought, but recognizing like the bigger idea is like, I don't feel worthy, I don't feel loved, I don't feel whatever. And that those things aren't true. It is just your brain trying to protect you, trying to point out the threat, trying to make sure that you stay safe. And notice like what that might mean. For you to stay safe would mean you would be isolating, you would be pulling away from people, you wouldn't want to go out, to be seen because you're worried that you'd be rejected. Like, just recognize that trying, not being flexible and not being willing to see outside of that situation or thought or feeling can keep you stuck and live a very small life, miss out on the fullness and richness that life and relationships and, experience have to offer you. So
Yeah, and I think it So I have my journal from the things that I've like treatment centers that I've been in and stuff. And it's funny when I like read them out loud because I'm just like, girl, you've grown.
Which is great.
But I understand the feeling of like, wait, what? Like how does this actually look in your everyday life? And you can either be, analysis by paralysis, or you can just start taking like little baby steps, like literally just thinking of what type of life you would want and taking one step every single day towards that general trajectory of that life. But on April 7th of 2021, I said, in group today, we learned about ACT and the different forms of ourself. Now, obviously, we didn't talk about self as concept or as context today, but just particularly ourselves as context. I thought mostly about this self as one that is not tainted whatsoever by the world or society. There is such pureness in that, something oddly special. But it's really hard for me to think of myself outside of my roles, my thoughts, my feelings, and emotions. Where do I even start? What would my life even look like if I wasn't those things? I guess I never really thought of the thought of who I am without those things. Like, actually, what would I actually do and say? How would I actually act? I have no clue. So like I really just I didn't know. And it was just kind of this willingness to accept that there is not just black and white, that my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions are not just facts. And just like that openness of it really does, it's kind of like openness therapy of like opening yourself up to there are other possibilities. There is the gray. There are um ways to kind of I didn't know that at the time. And I can understand that there are people listening that are just like, okay, so what does that actually look like? It means living your life and getting out of your head. That's what
Yeah.
it looks like.
It means like going to the beach and wearing the bathing suit anyway. It
Yep.
means going to the party anyway. It means just getting out there. Like,
So our challenge, I think, for this week is one thing that you can diffuse. So,
mm,
the I am a failure. I'm having a
oh
thought
yeah.
that I'm a failure. I'm noticing that I'm having a thought that I'm a failure. So doing that one time this week, seeing how it impacts your life and your actions and the way that you feel about yourself. And then what is one way that you can get out of your head and into your life?
Ooh. Ooh, I love that challenge. One way you can
What's yours?
out of your head.
What's one way you can get out of your head and into your life?
Oh, gracious day. Whew,
It's
I,
early in Arizona, sorry.
no, you're fine. I'm just like it's so hard because like right now again everything in my head right now is this relationship, which really bothers me. That's like that's all I'm like thinking about right now.
That's okay.
Um, but it anyway, and whatever it is, it's I think it's just like not. I think the biggest thing is not just assuming, just not being scared and just being okay with like being present and like rather than I think the big one for me is rather than think like this has to be it, this has to be everything, this has to be like it has to check every single box, it has to be, and if it doesn't then it's a threat, it's bad, it's whatever. Just accepting that this is where I'm at right now. This is who I'm dating right now. And everyone has good, like, we all have flaws, we all have things. And so like how can I just truly embrace this experience and just enjoy it rather than being so judgmental and fearful of it, but to just go and enjoy it for what it is. um,
Oh,
and not be so afraid of getting hurt or getting whatever. I think that's it for me.
it's
Right.
interesting that you say that. I'm reading a book right now,
Mm-hmm.
and if you guys have to go, totally fine. But I'm reading a book right now. It's called Love and Respect. It's a marriage book.
Oh.
Um, and it talks about like women, their need is to feel loved, and a man wants to feel respected. And
Mhm.
honestly, they're the same things, but like men live by the honor code and women want to feel that like safety, security, and
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
and one of the things that he talks about is in a relationship, like you can start to build up um I want to characterize this because it changed every like my perspective on a lot. So in a relationship, a man's deepest value is to be respected and to feel like all those things. So you can start building up contempt if, say they don't take out the trash. They, say something and you're like, like that doesn't align or whatever, like literally whatever the hell it is. And to not assume so like this person that's in your life, right?
Mhm.
Assuming goodwill and intent will change your perspective of how you look at him or them or
That's very true.
and I didn't understand that until I like started reading it about like if I go to Josh and I assume that he's like somehow trying to like sabotage me or like make me mad on purpose or I mean all of these things that you can think of, right? My reaction like is going to not be one of like that's positive. But if
Mhm.
I'm assuming that like I know his heart. He's a good guy. His intentions are pure. Like he's not trying to sabotage me. How am I going to look at the situation then?
Mhm.
And how it like really it allows you to not bring I mean, like my past relationships into like, wait, why are you doing that? Why did you say it like that? Like, no, I'm just saying those things because my past experiences make me question those things, I guess.
Oh,
It's
for
really
sure.
interesting.
It's tough not to project and not to be like, "Oh my," and yet at the same time, you don't wanna be blinded
Yeah.
to things either, but I think you're and that this is the whole point of dating.
Yep.
Is to is to just kinda get to know the person and to, like, over time, recognize how their actions do align with what they're telling you.
Yeah.
And it's and if you and it is that idea that our beliefs drive our behaviors, and if I believe that he's, if he's coming from a good place and that he really has good intentions and really genuinely wants to be the best version or whatever else, then I can look at that completely differently and I can react completely differently. But I think like I definitely have had issues where I'm like, oh my gosh, like nope, I've seen this, this means this. Like
Yeah.
I've had an experience like this is triggering this, and so this is a threat. And my initial reaction a lot of times is to run or
Mm,
is to push away. And so it's been very interesting for me to have to override
yeah.
um, those thoughts. But I appreciate that.
Yeah. I have a little thing on my wallpaper right now and it says my response, my responsibility.
Ooh,
Like that's
oh
something I've been
man,
working on is like I so like so one of my issues is like if Josh is having a bad day, like it has nothing to do with me. Like, I'm just trying to think of like his truck could break down and I will think like it's my fault. Like I didn't
yeah,
even drive his truck. I don't know why I'm thinking that, right? Logically I know that. So if he's having a bad day and responding otherwise in a way that I wouldn't, that's not my like it really isn't and it's not going to dictate my day. And so like
mhm,
I have a reminder on my phone that my response is my responsibility. The things that I respond to and react to are mine and reflect on my character, no one else's. So that's been something that I've been kind of like I just have to remember that.
no, I like, and anytime we bring up response, I'm always thinking of like Viktor Frankl's quote that we've talked about
Yeah.
before, but like putting that space between stimulant and response,
Yeah.
and that is where our true freedom lies, is being able to have the stimulant, have that something that irritates us or freaks us out or sends our mind going into all of these thoughts, and putting that space,
Mm,
putting that pause, taking a moment and saying again, I am noticing that I'm having this thought that,
Mhm.
and then being able to respond, not from a place of being overly reactive and fusing with the thought, but recognizing that it's just a thought itself. And you do have the power to respond in a different way, when you can like take a moment and see the whole picture for what it is.
Yep.
But anyway, thank you for that. What about you before we end things up?
Um, out of my head and into my life. Um, my family's coming to town tonight.
How
Um,
fun.
so I just hope that I can kind of disconnect and hang out, like make it a good weekend. I think mostly I think like I say it in like every episode since like April. Like I was in that like plateau phase, and I just have these like reoccurring thoughts of like, is this just where I'm going to be at for the rest of my life? Like, is this just like, is it like, is my weight loss, like, is that just what it's going to be? Is this my, all of these things, like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to like get to my set point, whatever, like these thoughts, these dumb things that are just kind of passing. Um, and, and a way for me to like really just step into my reality is, and like my life is to just keep my meals consistent and keeping myself like listening to my hunger, like going back to the things that I know that work. Um and and I had this like weird visualization of like my body yesterday, like really really weird, um of like the reason I was in the plateau was like to be like, I feel like I'm in a totally different body now. Like I feel like, yes, I've lost a significant amount of weight, and now like my body was just adjusting to it for the past few months, and like it's just different. I don't know how to explain it, but I just had this weird like visualization of it yesterday, and just being like, yeah, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep doing the things that I know that make me feel good, and keep moving my body, all of those things. Um so just making sure that I stick to those things because I know that they make me feel better. I know that in the moment, I don't necessarily always think that it's helping, but I know that like the outcome, like that will bring results, that will establish trust with my body, that'll establish trust with myself, all those things. So,
Just keep doing the thing.
yeah, there's not really another option, Victoria. So, that's
I
my,
yeah,
my thing.
I like it, and I think that will resonate with a lot of people because yeah, we do. Otherwise, if you do get really reactive, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what was the point? Like then you can go back to self sabotaging behaviors all over again.
Yeah. And
Um,
then I'm also obviously reading my book, the Love and Respect book. So again, just like the reminding myself that my response is my responsibility, and um yeah, it's really changed my perspective on things. So I'm liking it.
that's good. That's the whole point. We're always learning. We're always growing. I'll
Growing.
definitely take a look at that book. And thank you for sharing all of this with me. And hopefully, everyone else was able to get some benefit from it. I know this one got a little bit long, guys, but I think sometimes, whatever, it's nice for us to be able to talk.
Yep.
So,
All right. Well, make sure to leave a review. You can just leave the 5 stars, but we love seeing the like one
comments,
to
it
take the
like
time
makes our
to
day.
actually like write out something. It really does make a difference. And then make sure to turn on your notifications, to be notified when a new episode is done, and uploaded. And then obviously, I hope you're subscribed already. That's just it. And if you want to see like visuals and our facial expressions and all of the things, go to the YouTube channel. That's kind of where we're going to be focusing a lot because we do have a lot of different resources and visuals and stuff. So, other than that, have a good week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.